Welcome everybody to the 5th episode of Understanding the Edges. This is a series that has been put together by the Mayor's Commission on Homelessness and Affordable Housing that's really centered on highlighting different voices within our community that are engaged in work related to homelessness, and hopefully eventually we'll be highlighting the voices of some people who've experienced homelessness themselves. The purpose of this is really twofold: to provide education to folks around what the realities of homelessness are. I think oftentimes, again, that idea that we have in our head is not actually rooted in any sort of a reality. So talking to, again, the folks who are working with this regularly to get a better perspective. But the second part that I think is abundantly important is that when we talk about homelessness within our community, I think we all need to recognize that this is something that we all have a role to play in. So regardless of where you're coming from today, if you're a service provider, if you're a community member, there's a role for us all in ensuring that we address this issue as comprehensively as possible. So to that extent, today we are highlighting a really powerful advocate for homelessness issues in our community, Marie Elana Roland. She is the executive director for the Navigation Center on the peninsula here in Charleston. I could just introduce myself. My name is Chris Jardin, and I am the community liaison and homelessness coordinator with the city. But today, we're going to be focusing on the Navigation Center and all the great work that they're doing. So to start us off, Marie, if you could just tell us a little bit about the work that you do in community, because I know that you do so much, and further to that, why you do it.
Why I do it?
Okay. Yeah, why you do it.
I have no idea right now. I do it. I think a lot of you know what we do, but the center is opened, originally as a place for people to come and just get some resources, their showers and whatever. And then we took over, and we have now we have opened it up to help people that are possibly going into homelessness or are in homelessness, and a place for them to start. And what we do there is we have a team. We have several social workers with us, and we nobody ever actually thought about, if you become homeless, where do you start? The first thing you think about is you're going to go to the shelter, and unfortunately, as we all know, the shelter is pretty much full most of the time. And then where do those people go? And a lot of people aren't appropriate for the shelter, or the ones that families and single moms, and they have nowhere to go or where to start. So that's where the Navigation Center comes in. We consider ourselves of a hub, so to speak, where they can come in and begin that discussion of how to connect those dots to our community partners, and really what is the next step for them as far as getting out of homelessness and trying to figure out, what is the next, like I said, the next step to go. We've probably served over 1,000 people this year alone.
And so I know a lot of people probably are familiar, but I know that there's probably a lot more that aren't familiar. So what's a full sort of scope of services that one can access at your agency?
So currently, and then everything is opened up again since COVID. Currently, we have MUSC has actually stepped up. We have a telehealth clinic that's now at 1 day a week, and then we have 2 doctors in there 2 days a week. Department of Mental Health wasn't here, and we're kind of regrouping with that right now. But usually we have the homeless outreach with Dana Hazel will come in, and she's here 2 days a week. We also have employment, which we have John that works very closely with SE Works, trying to get them recertified in something with the WIOA programs. And then we also have showers here, and we also have washer and dryers here. And then we have a huge clothes closet. And then we also help, believe it or not, with food lately. A lot of people are donating their food. So even when we actually house people, which we average about 2 to 3 a week, we house people, they still need help. And that's where, we want to get better at, that we constantly are still with them even once they get housed. So they're coming to get food here. We also feed, speaking of food, we feed here Tuesday through Sunday from at 5 o'clock. It's a grab and go kind of thing. But they're getting a lot, again, people are coming back, so now they're getting full hot meals. And now we are also tagged to get them lunch. So now we're feeding lunch as well, Monday through Friday. It's just a whole list of things. And we also even have furniture that gets donated here, which pretty much goes quickly because sometimes people can't get beds right away. So we try to help them in between with the with the sheets and the blankets and whatever. And recently, since the COVID, we have increased of probably over 50%. We're working with a lot of children. So now we're working with a ton of children. We're working closely with LOR, which is a Low Country Orphan Relief, where we're actually getting their clothes. They can order every 4 months, their school supplies, and whatever else they need.
Great. Yeah. So it sounds like it's pretty comprehensive wraparound supports.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. And yeah, what inspired you to get involved in this work and been doing this for as long as you have?
I don't know. My degree is in engineering, but you always say you start where your job is from what where you grew up. And my mom was an advocate her whole life for cancer awareness back in the day. And, sometimes I think I got it from there, but just caring about people, so to speak. But, when I was working with the military, I work a lot alongside of the military I grew up in I went to college in Norfolk, Virginia. But I saw the need for a lot of our veterans that needed the coordination of services. There was a lot of disconnect. Yes, we have a lot of great community partners, and we have a lot of great places. They tell them where to go. But what we've seen, and again, over and over again, is, not that they can't do it, they really need that encouragement. And that's what we hear, that we believed in them, giving them the encouragement to take the next steps and call us when there's a breakdown instead of just being back on their own by themselves. But it was just, that's what got me in, and starting military community connections with our veterans. A lot of them, and they're still coming back, and they still need help. To relying on us to help them connect all the dots. That the VA obviously can do so much in their little box, and all of our community partners has this little box that we can do. So what we do is try to pull it all together, all those boxes together, I guess, so to speak, to make sure that they really utilize those community partners as much as they should.
Yeah, and I guess that I wanted to highlight that as you're sort of touching on it, but what would you say is sort of unique about the service that you provide within like the service provision landscape in our region?
I'm sorry?
What would you say is unique about the services that the Navigation Center provides within, the service provider landscape in the Charleston area?
Our needs?
Well, no, sort of the unique approach that you take to the work, or would you say that there's a unique approach?
I don't know. I'm not really understanding what you're asking me.
Like, would you say that you take a sort of approach to the work sort of differently than other agencies or other efforts within the community, or?
I just think that, with the homeless, you're in a crisis mode, and it's really hard to make decisions.
Sure.
And, if with our regular, not our regular, but, our folks that are at home trying to get services for their electric bill or utility bill, it's a little bit different when you're homeless and you're trying to connect those services, when you're living in the car and your kids are spread out all over the community. And in reality, they have all those services to support them. We just got to make sure they understand what we have to do to get there, and to make sure that they are utilizing all of the services that we have here. Because we're really, we're very fortunate in the Charleston area. We have a lot of great community partners that have a lot of those pieces, but it's just connecting all those pieces. Right. When you're homeless, it's really hard and difficult. And, a lot of our clients, we're kind of like their safe home, so to speak. So while they're working, while we're getting everything together, a lot of them never even reach the shelter. They get them into housing or temporary housing, or if they need to go in an Oxford house or wherever else that next step is appropriate for them. But at least they have a safe haven or someplace they can go to every day and say, okay, what do I need? What do I need to do next? Or this is my problem. I didn't get this or that. But just really literally connecting all of those dots for them.
sort of pretty aptly named in terms of the navigation center, is helping people to navigate what are often pretty complex systems. I mean, I know Charleston's not unique to this, but I think oftentimes, it can be difficult to navigate through these processes as a service provider, let alone, someone in the community who knows how many different sort of conflicting, challenges that they're trying to overcome. To that point, I guess from your perspective and from the work that you've done, what would you say are some of the more significant root causes of homelessness?
The reasons?
Yeah.
There isn't really one, this really isn't one reason.
Right.
It could be especially a lot of the women and even the men that we see, it could be an accumulation of a lot of abuse and trauma in their past. It could be, we've seen generational homelessness as well. We see families, extensive families that are almost a generational fact. A lot of it is mental health, a lot of them self-medicate themselves. And they just don't know how to get out of it, or they're just not ready. I always talk about the regrouping with these folks that we have. I mean, we have a lot of heroin addicts that we work with. We have a lot, but we just, one thing at our center, we're open for everybody. There is nobody that we just, we may have to regroup. You may not be, you're not doing what we need to do, but they're always welcome to come back and regroup and let's start over to get them connected into the right services, whether it's mental health. But, as with mental health and even drug abuse, they've got to be ready. And it's hard. The other big clients that we have that are homeless out there is our clients are elderly that have dementia. When we closed all of our mental health hospitals back in the day, a lot of these folks that we're seeing on the street is that's what we get. We've got a lot of people that have nowhere to go. So we have a lot of elderly patients out there with dementia that we're having a hard time placing, trying to get them assisted living or whatever that solution may be. But all of the community partners out there know that's probably one of one of those big gaps of services that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, it could just be that one paycheck, just our regular folks, it's just one paycheck. And COVID is definitely a good reason why we get that one paycheck that we're seeing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I like that you highlighted, again, sort of that trauma sort of informed approach to things. I think a lot of time there's there's many misconceptions around homelessness, but again, I think oftentimes people fail to realize the trauma that can come alongside just not having a place to, again, rest your head safely at the end of the night, have a good night's rest. It's always encouraging to see agencies that are sort of really keeping that at the forefront of the work that they provide for folks. So that sort of trauma-informed approach, I think, is so important. And to that point, again, what would you say, that you've encountered as some of the more significant misconceptions that people have around homelessness?
Everybody thinks that I believe that some people think they're just all drug addicts, or, it's a shame, but people don't realize the different faces that it could be the person, working next to you, it could be anybody. I just think that until you come here and you really live and see that all of the different faces that are homeless, I think a lot of people think that they are drug addicts and they all have mental health problems, and that's not true. We have so many families that are in hotels because they live paycheck to paycheck, but they've got a roof over their head, for their kids, but they just can't get to that next point of getting that deposit in their first month's rent.
Right.
So that's what I think, what I understand that people think. I don't know. It could be an array of.
Well, I think you even highlighted a good point right there. I think oftentimes when people think of homelessness, they think of people literally out on the streets, but again, that's not necessarily the case, right?
Right. Yeah. It could be your neighbor. You could be the person you're working with, right next to you every day. Because I know one lady, we actually are Ubering her every morning right now until she gets her first paycheck, but she's homeless with her child. But they don't know that. But we're helping her. And again, those little things that we help with that gets them to that next step,
Yeah, because oftentimes, I mean, again, like you said, people are sort of going from hotel to hotel, or folks are sleeping in their car or sort of doubled up in another apartment. I think that's actually represents probably the lion's share of homelessness in our area is doubled up if you look at the data. But yeah, stuff you're not necessarily going to see in your wanderings around the community. You talked about COVID. What has been the impact of COVID on your work or to the community that you serve?
So COVID had, besides already having the problem, of not being able to move in the house, but COVID has really, I think, if you think about, and again, we've been working with a lot of families, but if you think about single mothers, and as a mom, I know every time when summer came around, you kind of started getting nervous because what are you going to do with them for summer camp, But now for them, summer camp started in February when COVID hit. Then on top of that, with the schools closed down, we saw a lot of single mothers. They couldn't work because now they had to take care of their children every day. On top of that, a lot of the child care centers right in the very beginning, they weren't even opening because, everybody was in a panic at this point because we really didn't understand what we were going through with this pandemic. And we've seen so many, COVID, really was related to all of that. And it still is, we still have kids that are home. So we're getting better with jobs that are working from home. So that's what we're getting them employed with. And, the child care centers are opening. Also, we saw a lot, when people that were just about to get housed and the landlords just shut down. The landlord said, "Oh no, I'm not even going out of my door, let alone rent to anybody." So, that really hit hard for a lot of people when we didn't even have landlords that are willing to work with everybody. And then, a lot of people, we've also saw that they didn't even know what their rights were. I had an apartment, and we're getting them housed on Friday. They lived in that place for 3 months, and they told them they lost their jobs. And it was right when COVID hit, and they said that you have moved out. And we know now that we could have gone to Nicole or, to get some help for them. But it's, at this point, we just moved forward, and we're working on just getting them housed. They both worked, but a lot of people don't even know what their rights are, And then, everybody said, well, we'll just file unemployment. Well, unemployment was hit so hard and overwhelmed, people weren't getting unemployment checks. They were on standstill or, we did a lot of unemployment for our homeless that were out here, but there's some of them that still aren't getting their benefits and still trying to catch up. So all of that has to do with COVID. And, and I think, it did a huge impact on all of these folks that are, granted, there's a lot of them that took advantage of that too, but, a lot of them, are you there?
Yep, I'm there. Yep.
Okay. I don't know, I lost the whole picture or whatever, but yeah, so, that's what COVID really added to everything that, on top of what we already had existing.
What has been your experience sort of like working with landlords locally in terms of trying to get people housed?
Challenging as always. So as we all know, most of the clients that we work with, we need forgiving landlords is what we need. Because a lot of them do have evictions that are recent. A lot of them, we have some owe, but most of them is just the eviction part of it that we can't get them in. So right now I've got about 5 of them I'm working with, but they want double their deposit, or, and that's a lot for someone, yes, we want them to contribute to what they're supposed to be getting in, but it's very difficult, because again, we're working with a lot of, when you have a couple and you got 2 incomes coming in, but a lot of the folks we work with are single. It's really difficult to get them in. And, as with the funding right now, it's just, we're very limited. We need a lot more money to get these people rehoused, and then there's some that aren't COVID related. So, we just need a lot of rehousing money at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. What when sort of building those relationships with landlords, what have you? Because I imagine that it's like with so many things, a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings of, again, the clients that you're working with, and so there's apprehension that's not necessarily grounded in reality. What have you found to be effective in trying to like sort of overcome some of those
Just
obstacles?
building the relationship with them.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of landlords. We just housed a very large family, and so he really likes the work that we were doing. So he's actually been advocating for us and calling different people he knows that are in the community and trying to help us to understand. And some of them knowing that they have someone that they're working with.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, are more willing to work with them a little bit more, knowing that they have someone not to hold their hand, but no, someone's actually looking at their budgeting and making sure that this is truly the next step that they should be taking. But it's still, like I said, in fact, I just got an email, but she's asking for double the deposit. So I'm going to call her and try to advocate for her to say, hey, and I don't, I feel for the landlords because, they've really, there's a lot of people that took advantage of the COVID and what we've seen. Some people were getting money, but yet they didn't pay, the misconception of you have to pay it one way or the other. But don't come to us with a $5,000 bill knowing that, you were getting income. So what did you do with all that income that you were getting, and all of the unemployment checks and everything? So that's been frustrating as well on the flip side, so to speak. So I understand the landlords, it's a business and they have bills to pay too. So, we try to advocate for both sides, making sure it's appropriate. But, again, I'm going to be calling the landlord and asking them, can you please just do the 1 month or not the 2 month payment? And some people on the call know that, that's the tough part right there.
Yeah. And again, leading into that, I mean, I think, we'd both agree that obviously housing is a pretty significant challenge in our area. What would you identify as some of the biggest obstacles to sort of changing the housing landscape in our area?
Well, most of the people we work with, the most they make is, $2,000 a month, maybe $3,000 if we're lucky. So, we're looking for places that are $650, $700, $800 a month for them. And, one of the things we do too is, our goal is to build the foundation for them to get in, get their credit straight, get everything ready, and then maybe even look at first-time home buyers later on down the road so that if they own the home, it's going to be a lot cheaper than what they're renting it at this point. But if we can get them stable enough, but that's the challenge. There aren't, or in those places that are available, we're looking where they're not very desirable to be in. We've got income-based housing, but there is it's a long waiting list for those things. We can't get, we really need more income-based housing is what we really need, that we can get these people in. But even the income-based housing, if you have an evictions, then you can't get in. So we need forgiving all the way around, if we really want to help these folks. And that's why they keep getting evicted, because they move in trying to get their families and getting a house over them, thinking, okay, I'm going to do this, but yet they're so tight on their money, they get evicted again. But if we can find that, I don't even want to call it affordable housing, but we've got to have housing to meet the needs of the folks that aren't ever going to be able to afford $1,000 a month.
Right.
Just our regular landlords, because of the income base, it's just very hard to get in. Granted, some people can get in, but it's just a very long waiting problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that you highlighted too before, on one hand, it's just getting people in the door, but then helping people to sort of stay in that housing in a successful fashion. I feel like financial literacy is something that we should talk more about. Do you have any thoughts on that?
We try to help them budget. I wish I could put everybody on a payee so someone can budget their money, believe me, but you can't. We've had people, I would love to have a budgeting classes, but we can't. We've got to have a different budgeting classes. We can't have it coming from, I know bankers come in and they want to do this budgeting. We have to figure out on the level for them to, gradually to understand, we would like to do budgeting. I think an organization wanted to come in, like, had a budget with WIC, actually taking them out shopping and showing them how to budget with it, and, we have people in here and they say, well, I had to pay this bill and this bill. And I'm like, no, you need to pay, your rent comes first, your electric, and then if you need food or clothes, there's so many organizations that can help you. So that's what the mentality of, it's just, again, it's a crisis situation that they do. And I get it when you have children too, you think of them first, and that's the first thing that you're going to spend it on, and not making sure that you have that money to pay your rent.
Mm-hmm. Do you provide any budgeting supports to folks? Do you provide any budgeting supports to folks?
So John has what we do is we try to put everything in. There's a formula, and then they can see at the end, because when you see it, it kind of comes a little bit better to heart. But as you know, when you're in a generational type of way of doing things, you're just stuck doing the same thing. But if we can, I don't know if there's a solution, but other than just to kind of just keep harping on them that the rent is first, having a roof over your head first, and the electric bill and whatever else is priority, and then, we have so many community people and food banks and things like that. If you need, those are easy fixes that we can do for you. But the rent and having your family being homeless and starting that whole crisis over again. So we try to really harp on that a little bit more.
Right.
And we try to get them too to think about, when they get into the place, try to, have that savings of at least a month. So you're not, when you get to the next month, you already have it. But the problem is they're always behind, so to speak, waiting for that every 2 weeks they get a paycheck, so to speak.
Sure. So yeah, it sounds like, housing stock would be the most significant challenge, but education, both on landlords and tenants. And any other sort of significant barriers that you find in housing folks in our area?
Finding it, there's a lot of income-based housing out here, but obviously they're full, so we obviously have a need for it, and then the other piece is a lot of our folks that are on disability, we try to get them all to, if they can, to understand. A lot of people come and they think they're on disability. In fact, we had a young lady thought that she thought she couldn't work, literally thought she couldn't work. And she came in for a utility bill, and we told her, no, let's make sure, right? So, no, you can work. And they, the Social Security told her she has 5 kids. So she came in because she bought school clothes instead of paying her electricity. She was like, I can't believe all these years I thought I could not work. So now she's working, and we pretty much changed everything for her. And it was, it was really, and a lot of people just don't, but we try to get the disability. A lot of folks are stuck on the disability, they're only making $600 or $700. And, so many people want their own place, when we know in reality that we can't give that for everyone, because it's not really affordable for them. So that's probably another big, I don't know if it's a barrier, but it's also a need.
Yeah, that's a challenging one, right? Because you obviously want folks to be able to live in the space that they want to, but when we're dealing with such a scarcity, I struggle with that myself, and like, hey, here's the available option. You might not want that option, but that is the option. And so how do you move forward? Yeah, that's a tricky one. But I also say, like you highlighted, and I think this is something that is such a good reminder, is, with that woman who didn't realize that she was able to work, is how oftentimes I think as service providers, especially, we communicate information and just assume that people understand what it is we're communicating. When that's not necessarily the case, handing somebody sort of a flyer and just expecting them to like be able to actually process that information is a pretty big assumption. And so, yeah, to me, just like as it highlights a really great reminder to do better, I guess, at making sure that, what we're telling people is actually being absorbed.
Well, and that's something that we do when people call in for utilities. We want to know why they're behind. you know, and usually if I lost my job. So obviously we send them, you know, we want to know the whys, not just we want to pay your bill for you. So, and I know we all as community partners, we have to fill out the forms and whatever, but when you really start digging into it, and, you know, a lot of these people kind of break down sometimes, but, you know, you want to know why they're there and how we can improve their lives better than what they're already. I mean, we have so many people we work with from across the street that you know, they want to get out of public housing. They want to do better. And that's where John can help them with employment and getting them to know that there are opportunities that they can get trained in pretty much anything that they want to be, and that they have all of those opportunities that are out there. And again, it's, you know, letting them know of all of the opportunities that are available. It doesn't matter, you know, who you are, where you live, or whatever. All of those opportunities are for everyone, and that's what we try to do here.
And that's a great segue too, because, you know, talk about challenges, but what would you talk about opportunities? What would you say are some of the strengths in our community as far as, you know, the housing landscape and the services that are available?
I think the best thing we have here is we all talk to each other. Right. I think because, you know, especially for a lot of us, you know, we've worked, you know, and there's a lot more we need to learn. There's probably a lot more services out there that are available. But I think it's our community partners. We really work together, and we work well together, and we communicate together, and trying to make it seamless as much as we can for these folks. I think, and we're getting better at what we do. You know, we all know it's a learning curve for everyone. Every day is a new day. Every day is a challenge. So, because we never know, especially in this type of work that we all do, you know, we never know what's going to walk in that door and what that next, you know, what is going to come to us. But I think the best thing that we have is the community partnership that we have amongst all of us. And that's where I think the strength is for a lot of these folks that are becoming successful because of it.
Yeah, I think that, again, so we were talking about before, just again, how complex people's needs can be and multifaceted. And so, yeah, absolutely such an important message there around sort of communication and recognizing that this is not any one agency or individual's responsibility. But if we're really going to tackle this appropriately, we need to come together as a community and work well with each other, which, you know, I would agree is definitely a strength. But even beyond the service provision, I guess, how could the average citizen in Charleston County be more engaged in these issues? How can they participate?
The issues in general, or
yeah, issues related to housing and homelessness.
I mean, some people are, you know, for here, you know, we have a lot of volunteers. Our volunteer base has really grown. I mean, I hate to say that COVID did it, but, you know, we've had more and more churches here that have really supported us in every effort. And as far as the community in general, I really don't know what that answer would be, but just to have an open mind and to listen to the needs of our community partners, because as we know, you know, funding is very hard for a lot of people these days. A lot of people are under their own hardship right now as well. But, you know, it's just being mindful of what's out there and understanding that we have a lot of homeless people out here, and it could be your neighbor that's ready to be homeless. It could be just being mindful of who those people are, and it could be anybody. And just to support our local community partners here.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is, like, from your perspective, I don't know if you have, I know that the data is not great, but like, how big of an issue would you say homelessness is in our community?
That's pretty big.
Very big.
We have people come in here every week that are homeless. You know, not just our families, but there's always someone off the street coming in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously we try to get them the shelter, but a lot of them don't even go that far. A lot of them, as we call here in our community, is the travelers that are just coming, passing through. But we have a lot of people that are homeless. You know, we have a lot of people that are being discharged from hospitals. You know, there's a lot, you know. Mm-hmm. I don't know what, you know, I guess we'll have that pit count. But there's a lot, you know. And I know there's the definition of homelessness, but we also have a lot of those folks that are just going from couch surfing, or we have those folks that are, we have a lot of people living in cars with their children spread out all over the place. We just have a lot of people living in cars too. But we have a pretty big need here. I mean, not as bad as some of the other states, but I mean, we definitely have a large population here.
Mm-hmm. And I guess building on that as well, so we talked about the strength of sort of our services and being sort of collaborative and communicative. Are there any barriers that you would identify just in the way that social services are set up in general? Not even necessarily here, but just as a system, like things that you're constantly sort of struggling against and trying to navigate, these various mechanisms?
Social serve, everybody. I mean, we're just overworked. I mean, we're overwhelmed, and underfunded, So, everybody is doing the best they can. I think all of us in general, just talking to our community partners, that there's just so much need right now, that, we're just all overwhelmed at this point. And I mean, that's our biggest struggle, I think, right now, between all of our partners and including ourselves. We can't keep up with the calls that we get every day. People now, if they can't reach us, they're walking in, and coming in to see us. So, we're just all pretty much overwhelmed, and COVID kind of helped us with that. But I just think we're just all overwhelmed, I think, at this point.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would highlight that you, like the navigation center, could need in terms of being able to meet that need? Obviously finances, but do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, the finances, we're getting more people in here, we're really working hard on our volunteer side. Again, it's, we get a lot of people through, but, the biggest thing is, again, the community partners that are out there understand that we're underfunded for rehousing people right now. We get them all the way through, and now it's the rehousing piece, for some of these folks that we're working on, and hopefully we'll do a campaign to help. But, that's our biggest struggle right now, and just keeping up with the, getting a good volunteer base in here is going to be key for us, and making sure everything is flowing correctly. But again, it's the calls. They don't stop. They just don't stop here.
Yeah, and I know
everybody else. I know I'm not the only one. It's not just us, but everyone.
And I know, from our conversations, there's a lot of agencies, and you talked about hospitals that just don't know how to support, folks that come through their doors, and they often wind up on your doorstep.
But it's okay, though. I mean, it's not okay, but there isn't any other, that, again, the gaps of services that we talked about, those step-down services that we need for those that just gone through all of their IOP, all of their addictions and everything, and then now they're homeless. So they're, it's like this vicious cycle that we keep going through, the elderly that have nowhere to go. Those are the gaps of services, that we need. And it's not really a shelter kind of need. It's more of services to address the step-down services for them. And that's why we use the Oxford houses a lot, that are coming out of these programs, that they need to be in a suitable shelter, for them to still address those issues and continue on their sobriety, so to speak. And a lot of them and the calls we get are elderly that are coming here that they don't know what to do with. And again, like I talked about earlier, is we need those types of services to address them that are appropriate. And not all of them are appropriate for hospital beds at the shelter, but where is that place that we can put them instead of on our doorstep until we can get them in to an assisted living or whatever. Not everyone is appropriate for assisted living, but, and again, it goes back to the mental health side. So it's the appropriate transitional, possibly permanent housing for these people,
Yeah, that has sort of the wraparound supports, sort of infused into the housing. Yeah, absolutely.
And, mental health, everyone, again, we're all overwhelmed. I mean, and we have Dana here. It's just, if you saw our board, it's a lot of people that are seeing her. So, you can only do so much, so, we're looking at different services coming in the future. So, to help address, to relieve some of that stuff. But, we're just doing the best all of us are doing the best that we can at this point, I guess.
What do you have in the works in terms of your agency, down the pipe?
I mean, I think we really need more clinical presence here. We're talking to some of our community hospitals on our next step with that. I mean, we were actually going to start everything, and we had a lot of other services coming in here, and then COVID hit. So we're trying to regroup to see, how we can get people back safely. Right now we only allow 6 people in at a time, just to keep the number of, just to keep everybody safe. It seems to be working. So hopefully until, not everybody's comfortable yet. So.
Would you highlight any ways that like folks in our community could support your work?
What do you mean?
Yeah, like how could like the people of Charleston County support the work that the Navigation Center does?
So we really need, I would love to have more groups here for women, especially with trauma. Okay. We have a lot of people that just sit on the doorstep kind of thing. It'd be nice if we can be actually doing something with their time, instead of that, just sitting, and doing a little bit more groups for the trauma-informed folks that we have. We've talked to a couple of people even with the children's programs. A lot of people, we're trying to work more with children and trying to help them as they're going through this whole journey of theirs. I think it's a big need that we need to address at some point. Those are one of my biggest targets right now, that if we can, I would love to have the Navigation Center. We're actually talking about being open on a Saturday to do type of kind of work with people, because again, they have nothing to do all day long. If we can usually use that time in a positive way of some sort, I'm not saying that we can wipe it away, but at least it gives some more people some options, and and maybe we can help a little bit better. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is not unique to homelessness. I think anybody, who just left to like sort of sit with their own thoughts all day, every day, could go to some pretty dark places, especially when, again, you have so many challenges that you're facing. Again, I think that's a great idea. Just what are ways that we can sort of get people engaged in something meaningful.
A purpose.
Sense of purpose. Yeah. I used to work in harm reduction with substance use along those lines, and this standout story for me is this guy. We had a peer program. We had folks come in and help with our supply distribution, and after months of working with us, this guy told me, he's like, hey, you know what? I don't know if I told you this, but like when I first got on, my substance use had really gotten out of hand, and I was really uncomfortable where it was going. But having this opportunity to really sort of apply myself to something that was meaningful and give back to my community, I found this sense of purpose that I like no longer needed to find at the end of a needle. And I was like, wow, that's exactly it right there. Right. Again, I think as a community, we could think, more creatively about how we could provide opportunities for folks who are experiencing homelessness, even just sort of the idea of like some low barrier ways to sort of be reintroduced to the job market and sort of gradually sort of move in that direction. It's like, it could be a pretty big hurdle for folks who've been out of work for a long time to sort of jump in and be, like you said, it's not same with housing, it's the same with employment. It's not just, getting that job, it's keeping that job and maintaining that.
Right. I mean, because you got to think about, that's what I worry about the most, to get people housed, and then what we see the most is they're back to homelessness. Well, they're not back to homelessness because they want to be homeless. They're back to homelessness because that's the only community and friends that they've ever had. Yep. So I go back to what I look at, when we're working with I work with the National Guard contract, and they find people all over the place. I mean, places, to get them recruited into, getting in the military. And then when they're done, they've never had a community before they started, but they built that community and the camaraderie and everything, and your brothers and your sisters, and you felt like you belonged and you had a purpose, and I'm not saying the military is the same, but I'm just getting the idea. But then when they were released, those are the ones that we saw a lot at MCC. They had no purpose anymore. Their brothers have all scattered, and they really didn't. They were lost, and that's what I see with our homeless, is that I'm not saying the camaraderie being homeless and being a drug, getting into drugs or whatever. It's just that that's the only community they ever know, and they felt part of something, and that's what we have to stop. That's what we can try to reconnect them, and to know that even when they get into their house, and we're already working with some of the churches now, and we talked about it at our advisory board, and we are doing it now, is having that church wrap around and actually support them, bringing their furniture to them, start talking to them, getting them engaged in some other activities for the kids or just themselves, or someone they can even just talk to. But again, I think that's a barrier, I guess you could say, that we can get them housed sometimes, but now how do we keep them in there? And again, it's trying to help them create a good community for that, not just going back to the old one because it's easy.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's such a key word there, is communities, and I think something that we, as a community don't necessarily think of, but, when someone, again, is facing a number of obstacles and doesn't have a lot of sort of apparent options, but they have like this group of people that they're with, that they receive, again, some kind of support from, whatever that looks like. And then, they get housed, way over there, again, deprive people of that community, which is so valuable, arguably just as valuable as having a house. I mean, again, we're social creatures. We're designed to be in community with one another. So I think, that's, to me, at least, again, an important piece of like housing people successfully, is like addressing, where do you find community, and how can, we support you to, build a community that works for you and that, is supportive to you. It's a really good reminder.
We have people that get housed and they still come and hang out.
No, totally.
I have a veteran right now. I'm like, what are you still doing here? He goes, well, I don't have anything to do. All right, well, come back. So let's get you doing something. Let's get you back into, if you can't work, let's get you, and he's actually a veteran. We have the vet center here, and there's the senior center, and, trying to get them to reconnect. But I mean, you don't need to be down here. Let's try to find something for you, know. And again, it's but it goes to show you. I mean, that's what they do. They come back down here because they know people here.
What gives you hope these days?
Gives me hope.
Yeah.
Seeing a lot of the successes that we have here, and seeing people actually getting to and getting housed and finding that job, even though, we may seem a little bit to help them along the way, but it's just seeing people very happy and their family happy, and their and our clients being successful, and that brings me hope. We have a lot of rough days here. We never know who's going to walk in the door. We really don't. But, and then we always say, and after someone comes in and says, thank you, and are in tears, and, we couldn't have done it. You believed in me, you gave me hope to get to the next step. That's when you say, okay, all right, we're doing something right. So that's what gives me hope, keep going.
I mean, I think that's great. Yeah. I mean, despite all the obstacles we listed, the fact that there's still success happening in the community, and the work is being done slowly but surely. We are making those connections for folks.
And it's one person. It's not just us. It's, the successes of all these clients that we have is the accumulation of all of us. So, and that's what the key is all of us doing it, the community doing it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The last 10 minutes, I'm going to open it up to questions. So if anyone has any questions, you can throw them in the chat, and we will field them. We had a question come in before. Do you know, have any sort of advice or thoughts on where people, who are struggling with the trauma they've experienced, through their process of experiencing homelessness, can find supports?
So, we're using some of the community partners, and they're just over right now. They have no spots open.
Right.
We were using, and that's one of the partners that was supposed to be here is PAR, that we wanted to come here on site. But we really don't have anybody at this point except getting them into counseling. And that's what I was saying, we need so much more of that right now. Especially these women that we see just sitting out here most of the time, that are constantly going in that wheel, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that you great at building relationship with folks. To me, in my experience, like the most important part of like trauma informed care is just that, is being in good, healthy relationship with folks. I think that oftentimes when people hear the word trauma, they get like, whoa, like beyond my pay grade, like I have no role to play in, supporting people through that. But I think that's when talking about misconceptions, I think that's a pretty significant one. We've all experienced trauma at some point, to some degree. It's not something that's wrong with any of us. It's something that's happened to us. And again, no matter who you are, if you're a service provider, if you're just a regular old citizen, again, you can be in relationship with folks. You could have a conversation and just be a positive presence in someone's life. And that goes, I think, a lot farther than people realize.
A lot of the women that I work with, unfortunately, we had a lot of abusive cases, and they're doing a lot of their counseling online virtually. And because I've talked to several of them, because that's one of the things that we put on their checklist is that now you need to get help, along with your children. And the school system has been really good about getting that help and getting them connected as well, with a lot of their social workers there at the school or their school advocates. But a lot of it's virtual at this point, and there are some places out there that can do that. Again, it's about, we can talk, again, it's about anything else. You can talk about it unless they actually get it and engage in it, and do it consistently, it really isn't helping. But what we can do is just keep planting that seed, and hopefully that they will get that help that they need.
And I actually had a question come in that ties right into that. The question is, when working with all these folks who are in survival mode, so to speak, how do you acknowledge the mental space they're in while trying to explore long-term options and a wider range of options than they may see?
One step at a time.
Right.
First with these folks, you have to, as is you've got to gain that trust with them. It's not a full-blown, okay, these are all the things you need to do. It's more of a conversation with folks than an analysis of a checklist of what they need. Some of them, it's just a matter of, because when we talk to them, even though we're doing this in basic intake of them, they start really breaking down, and really getting into deep into what their needs are, that we might have to, at that point, that's why we love Department of Mental Health here, is that we can bring them over and get mental health involved, to helping them that they may not have thought they ever needed. But again, when it comes to that crisis, some people, we just do it really just one little step at a time. Nothing like we're going to do this all at once.
Yeah, in my experience, obviously, when folks are confronted with what is literally a mountain of again, obstacles, it can seem, debilitating, how are you ever going to surmount that? And so looking for those easy successes, it could be something super, super simple, just making a phone call. But even just being able to check something off the list can really help to sort of build that sense of oh yeah, okay, I can tackle this again incrementally.
And there's a lot of back and forth, they break down and they come back up. But again, what's nice about the navigation center is they can call somebody and break down. Mm-hmm. I'm having a bad day. What do I need to do? And, and we get a lot of that. But again, there isn't any one quick sweep for everyone. It's a little bit at a time, and we try, the thing of just getting food is such a big deal for people that we can leave that right away for them. It's a sense of release, a relief, and then gradually get them to where they need to be.
Right. Any other questions from the chat? feel free to throw them along. I have another one. In terms of accessing your agency, what's the best way for people to either self-refer or to refer somebody they're working with or that they know?
The website, we get a lot of referrals from there. And calling in, they can call in. We do try to tell them that it can't be that same day we can call them back, but somebody will call them back.
Right.
And we got someone right now that's doing all of that right now. It's just overwhelming, because we try not to take on so many more cases until we finish the ones that we have, because it's not fair. Or we try to get them a little bit of help, or at least refer them to somebody. But right now it's just a lot of people at once right now. We're just kind of overwhelmed right now, what we have.
Do you have a sense of what, like, when someone could expect a call if they do call in, like
24 to 48 hours. I mean, we'll get, yeah. When we see at the hospital, it's usually a discharge. We are getting into a new case management system. So pretty soon we'll have agencies that'll be able to send us a direct referral. That's coming out pretty soon. And then even referral, we'll be able to send the referral so that people will know where they're coming from. But pretty soon agencies can send them, instead of just showing up, especially the hospitals that we get, they can now fill out a referral form and even everything online about the client. So at least we have a little bit more heads up before. Sometimes they just drop them off at our doorstep. So we're trying to get better about that. And the system hopefully will help us do that.
Can people do drop-ins?
Excuse me?
Can people drop in? Like
they always
in person? Yeah.
As soon as we open there, there's somebody sitting in the parking lot.
Right.
Sometimes we just try to get them back, later in the day, but we do. Okay, they do drop in.
Great.
Because some of them, especially if they're homeless, just walking off the street, you can tell. We usually take them in just to get them started at least, no matter what time of day it is, instead of turning them away, because we know most likely they won't come back.
Well, that's something I would say I do value a lot about the work that you do. Is I think there are not a lot of sort of spaces in our community where you can go and connect. And again, I love that you are all able to sort of provide that for folks. Again, that open door. That again, if they can't get seen right away, that again, there's a space that people can physically go to connect with supports. Yeah,
and get them to thinking again that they're, not all of them come back, but sooner or later they do come back. Especially when you give them a shower and just to kind of regroup a little bit. Know that we just they have to think about it. Not everybody is ready to dive in to getting help, I've seen it 2 years for people sometimes, but we just, as long as they can start that process, at least, hopefully we can help them with that.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Marie, for your time today and just for what you do in the community. Really, again, appreciate you and again, the work that your agency does. And thanks to everyone for joining us and stay tuned to next month for another episode.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Take care, everybody.